Our top story today is the sentencing of former U.S. Olympic and Michigan State gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. Nassar, accused of sexual assault by hundreds of young women, was sentenced to a minimum 40 and a maximum 175 years in prison. On the night prior to that sentencing, Michigan State received notice that the school would be the subject of an NCAA investigation. And on Wednesday morning, MSU responded, saying they would, quote, prepare a comprehensive response and will cooperate with any investigation. Chris Solari of the Detroit Free Press has been covering this story, wrote an article in today's paper on that very topic. Chris, what's your sense of when this investigation will begin and how large the scope could possibly be?
Well, the scope is, I mean, when you look at what happened with the Penn State case, I think they're going to be very cognizant of what specifically they're looking at. I think they will be looking at the MSU athletes, and I think there are about a dozen that span 5 different Michigan State women's sports who gave victim impact statements in court the last week. I believe that's going to be the crux of what they're looking at in the health and welfare of the student athletes, which is directly in the NCAA bylaws and manual. As far as a timeline, I would imagine it's going to be expedited. Michigan State trustee Joel Ferguson on Monday said that the NCAA wouldn't dare investigate the university, and I thought it was a pretty quick turnaround to get that letter of inquiry probably about 24 hours after he made those statements on a local radio show in Lansing. So in terms of the timeline of that, I mean, this is a scope of a case that we don't really know. I mean, we know how the Penn State situation progressed, and it was sometimes slow and sometimes ham-handed and sometimes a lot of backtracking. So I would think that this is going to be a case that the NCAA to take up is going to have all their ducks in a row before they proceed.
And Chris, the NCAA did seem to step away from non-directly athletic, more criminally related cases after what happened at Penn State. How would you envision this investigation being similar or different to what we saw in State College?
Well, I think this is going to be different because you're talking about actual student athletes. The victims in the Jerry Sandusky case were outside of the athletic program. This is one where you're talking about 5 different women's sports: gymnastics, rowing, track and field, volleyball, and softball, where athletes have made accusations against Nassar for treatment that was directed by Michigan State. And he was a team doctor for those sports. So that is where this differs significantly from the Sandusky case. In the NCAA bylaws, it really covers a lot of this ground of protecting the athletes and providing a safe environment. And I think that's going to be the crux of this, and I think that's going to be where they are looking more so than the things that you're seeing in the criminal courts right now and what will eventually be in the civil courts.
Chris, you brought up the name Joel Ferguson, the chairman of the Board of Trustees. The calls for his resignation and the resignation of President Luana K. Simon grow louder by the day. How, if at all, do you believe this investigation could potentially expedite or maybe even delay any decisions by people in power at Michigan State?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, when you look at everything that has transpired and the calls have grown louder and louder for resignations. Lansing State Journal published an editorial in December calling for President Simon to step down. The State News called a week or so ago with a front-page editorial, just like the Lansing State Journal, for her to step down. Joel Ferguson, when he went on the radio show on Monday, drew a ton of heat and a lot of backlash for his comments. And he had previously made statements back in March of 2017 to a Detroit TV station calling the attorneys for the victims ambulance chasers. So these are things that have been building. I don't know. We're really in new territory here in terms of whether the university president will step down, whether the board of trustee members will step down. We saw late this afternoon that Sue Carter, the MSU athletic faculty rep, stepped down. She's the first prominent member of the administration to step down. She's also a professor at MSU. So you're starting to see some of the recriminations now, now that the victim statements are done, now that Nassar has been sentenced.
All right, lastly, Chris, we haven't heard a ton from Simon other than one or two statements. Perhaps we've heard too much from Joel Ferguson at this point. We also heard Tom Izzo and Mark D'Antonio speak on Simon's positive qualities as a leader. I believe you were the one to get that quote from D'Antonio. Do you think we should expect to hear more or less from all involved at MSU now that this is officially an NCAA investigation?
I would expect we're going to hear a lot less from Michigan State at this point. Mark Hollis has been quiet. He issued a statement today about the investigation that MSU will cooperate fully. But now that they are under investigation by the NCAA, I don't believe that we will be hearing a lot on this case. Remember, again, they've got a lot of civil litigation pending as well. So now you're looking at it on two fronts from Michigan State's side. So certainly a lot of things that are going to transpire over the coming weeks and months.
Chris Solari of the Detroit Free Press. Chris, great stuff, terrific reporting. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rick.